Imagine discovering that a man was sentenced to death simply for asking questions. Not for stealing, not for killing, not for leading a rebellion, but for asking questions. And the most astonishing part? He had the chance to escape, run away, and save his own life. But he refused. He took the poison with his own hands and calmly walked toward death. Who would do such a thing, and why? This is the story of Socrates, the man who forever changed the way humanity thinks, and whose death became one of the most shocking and mysterious events in history. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this prove that some ideas are more powerful than entire armies. Athens, around 470 years before the birth of Christ. The city was the center of knowledge, art, and politics in the ancient world. But among its grand palaces, temples, and debates, a boy was born whom nobody imagined would one day become immortal in human history. His father was a sculptor, his mother was a midwife. There was no wealth, no noble blood, no signs of greatness, just an ordinary child in an extraordinary city. But from an early age, Socrates seemed different. While others chased money, fame, and power, he became fascinated by something invisible: the truth. He watched people, he listened to their speeches, and he noticed something strange. Many of the men considered wise spoke with absolute confidence, yet when questioned deeply, their certainty began to crumble. This seemingly simple observation sparked an obsession that would define the rest of his life. Years later, an event occurred that changed everything. A friend of Socrates visited the Oracle of Delphi, believed to be the voice of the gods in ancient Greece. There, he asked a surprising question: is there anyone wiser than Socrates? The answer was shocking. No, no man was wiser. When Socrates heard this, he was confused. He did not consider himself wise. Quite the opposite. He felt that he knew very little, so he decided to investigate. And that decision began the journey that would eventually lead him to his death. Socrates started visiting politicians, poets, artists, generals, and intellectuals. He spoke with them publicly. He asked simple questions, but there was one problem. The questions were so profound that they began to dismantle everything people thought they knew. You claim to be just, but what is justice? You say you understand courage, then define courage. You claim to know what goodness is, but what exactly is goodness? At first, the men answered confidently, but as Socrates continued questioning them, they realized they could not truly explain their beliefs. The crowd watched in fascination. The powerful watched in fury. Because Socrates was exposing a terrifying truth, many people who presented themselves as wise actually knew very little. It was then that he reached a conclusion that would echo through the centuries: I know that I know nothing. It was not a statement of ignorance. It was a declaration of intellectual humility. While others believed they possessed all the answers, Socrates understood that true wisdom begins when we recognize our own ignorance. And that realization made him increasingly influential. Young people throughout Athens began following him through the streets. They watched his debates. They learned his way of thinking. They discovered how to question everything. But the more followers he gained, the more enemies he created. The leaders of the city began to see a danger. Imagine hundreds of young people learning to question authority, traditions, and long-held beliefs. To the rulers, that was a threat. And with every passing year, the tension grew. Meanwhile, Athens was suffering through political crises, wars, and internal conflicts. Fear spread throughout society. And when a society becomes afraid, it often looks for someone to blame. And guess who became the perfect target? The old philosopher who spent his days questioning everything. Soon, rumors began to spread. They said Socrates was corrupting the youth. They said he disrespected the gods. They said his ideas were dangerous. Little by little, public opinion began to shift. The man once admired by many started to be viewed as a threat. Then came the day that would change history forever. Socrates was arrested. The charges were clear: corrupting the youth, and failing to believe in the city's gods. Now imagine the scene. The philosopher was about 70 years old. He could have apologized. He could have begged for mercy. He could have lied to save his own life. But instead, he did the exact opposite. Standing before the court, He faced his accusers without fear, and then he spoke words that stunned everyone present. He said he had never corrupted anyone. He said he merely encouraged people to think. He said he obeyed his conscience above political pressure. The crowd was divided. Some admired him even more. Others wanted him condemned. The trial continued. The tension intensified. Every word could determine whether he would live or die. Then came the verdict. Guilty, by a narrow margin. But the worst was yet to come. According to Athenian law, after being found guilty, the accused could propose an alternative punishment. This was his opportunity. Perhaps exile, perhaps a fine, perhaps imprisonment, anything. But Socrates did something unbelievable. With unmistakable irony, he suggested that he deserved a reward for his service to the city. The reaction was explosive. The jurors were outraged. The result? The final sentence. Death, by drinking hemlock, a deadly poison. The fate of Socrates was sealed. But the most remarkable moment in the story had not yet arrived. While waiting for his execution, his friends devised an escape plan. The guards could be bribed. The route was prepared. He could easily flee, live in another city, continue teaching, continue breathing. Everything was ready. But Socrates refused. Why? Because he believed that escaping would destroy everything he had defended throughout his life. If he claimed to respect the law, he could not break it simply because it now worked against him. Even if he believed the verdict was unjust, even knowing that he would die, his decision left his friends devastated. Some cried, others begged him to reconsider, but nothing changed his mind. Then came the final day. The prison cell was silent. His disciples gathered around him. Among them was Plato, who would later become one of the greatest philosophers in history. The jailer entered carrying a cup. Inside was the hemlock, the poison that would end his life. The atmosphere was filled with grief. But then something extraordinary happened. Socrates remained calm. No anger, no despair, no fear. He took the cup. Subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who loves stories that changed the world, because the next story might completely transform the way you see reality. Shanasi Babarig, Shansi, Shadu Sesha Isda.